The sun burned high over the jagged peaks of the Kinner Valley, casting the mountains in cruel, unrelenting light. Dust shimmered in the air, clinging to uniforms and weapons as the small detachment of American Special Forces settled into their overwatch position. The mission had sounded simple on paper. Move quietly under the cover of darkness, observe a suspected Taliban compound from the ridgeline, record intelligence on enemy movements, and extract without raising alarm. Routine surveillance, at least that's how it had been written in the operations briefing. But Sophia knew better than to expect routine in Afghanistan. She had been in country long enough to see how quickly plans unraveled. A single villager spotting unusual movement, a shepherd reporting men on the ridge, or a poorly timed radio transmission could turn an observation mission into a fight for survival. Sophia was not a rifleman or a commando by trade. She was a medic, assigned to Special Forces Operational Detachment Alpha 312. Her job was to keep soldiers alive when no helicopter could reach them, to stabilize wounds in places where hospitals were nothing more than distant hopes. She carried trauma kits, surgical tools, vials of medicine, and the knowledge to use them. Her role was clear. She healed. She saved. And yet, today, fate had other plans. The team spread across the ridgeline, each soldier knowing their part. John, the grizzled master sergeant, directed the formation with practiced ease. Michael, sharp-eyed and steady, adjusted his optics to study the compound far below. Daniel monitored radio chatter, his headphones pressed tight, searching for patterns in the static. Emma, the team's marksman, set up her long rifle on a bipod, adjusting her scope for distance and wind. And Robert, the lieutenant, moved between them, checking positions while maintaining contact with higher command. Sophia positioned herself at the center of their defensive circle, unpacking her medical gear and making sure everything was within arm's reach. She had no illusions. If something went wrong, her hands would be needed quickly. The valley below seemed quiet, deceptively so. The compound nestled in the shadows of rock, and scrub looked abandoned, but intelligence reports had marked it as the gathering place of a Taliban commander responsible for deadly attacks across the region. Movement in the compound, Michael reported softly, his eye pressed against high-powered glass. Multiple armed figures. Looks like a meeting. John nodded grimly. Stay sharp. Eyes only unless we're engaged. No one fires unless absolutely necessary. The minutes stretched long, heavy with heat and silence. Then Daniel's voice cut through the stillness. Unusual activity on enemy comms. Multiple transmissions, coordinated movement. They know we're here. Sophia felt her stomach tighten. This wasn't the first time enemy fighters had reacted as if they could smell Americans on the wind. Information traveled fast in the valleys. Sometimes it came from sympathetic villagers, sometimes from paid informants. Either way, it meant danger. Prepare to move to extraction, John ordered. His voice carried calm authority, though his eyes betrayed urgency. The team began shifting back toward their planned escape route. And that was when it came, a single crack, sharp and merciless, echoing off the stone walls of the valley. A bullet slammed into rock, just feet from Michael, throwing dust and shards into the air. Sniper! Michael yelled, diving behind a jagged boulder. In an instant, the entire team flattened into cover. The shooter had the high ground, hidden in a cave nearly 1,200 meters away, perfectly placed to watch the Americans' every move. The position was brilliant, concealed from the air, shielded from direct return fire, commanding the valley like a king on a throne. Sophia's heart pounded as she pressed herself into the dirt, her kit tight against her chest. She had trained for gunfire, but the helplessness of being pinned under an invisible rifle was something else entirely. Emma, calm despite the chaos, adjusted her scope. Negative visual, she muttered. I see flashes but no target. He's dug in. The sniper fired again, a clean, deliberate shot that forced the team deeper into cover. Every bullet was placed with the patience of a hunter, not a hurried fighter. Whoever he was, this enemy knew his craft. Sophia's instincts screamed to move, to run, but she stayed pressed against the earth. Medics weren't supposed to fight battles like this. They patched wounds. They dragged the wounded back to safety. And yet, even as dust clung to her sweat-dampened face, She felt the weight of responsibility pressing harder than ever. This was no longer surveillance. This was survival. And none of them, not John, not Emma, not Robert, could see a way out. The ridgeline had gone silent except for the echo of the last rifle shot and the crunch of pebbles tumbling down the slope. Dust hung in the air like smoke, thick and gritty in every breath. Sophia stayed flat, her cheek pressed against the dry earth. Every instinct told her to move, but she knew that one careless inch could draw the sniper's crosshairs. John's voice crackled over the radio, calm but edged with urgency. "Stay low. He's got us locked down. Emma, can you find him?" The marksman adjusted her rifle, scanning through glass that magnified every wrinkle of rock on the opposite slope. She moved in patient arcs, but shook her head. "Negative. He's buried deep. All I get are flashes when he fires. No clear shot." Sophia clenched her jaw. She wasn't a sniper, wasn't trained to look for those faint glimmers of light and shadow. But even she could feel the enemy's presence, watching, waiting. Somewhere across that valley, a man had all the time in the world to aim and fire. Another shot cracked. This time the bullet smashed into the rock inches above Daniel's head, showering him in stone fragments. He cursed, ducking lower, pressing a hand to a shallow cut on his forehead. "He's playing with us," Daniel muttered. "He knows exactly where we are." John didn't answer immediately. His eyes darted across the ridge, calculating distances, terrain, and options. But Sophia knew what he saw. They had none. The sniper had the extraction route covered. Helicopters couldn't land under precision fire. Movement meant death. And reinforcements were already on the way. "Enemy chatter increasing," Daniel reported, his voice tight. "Sounds like a squad moving toward our grid. 30 minutes, maybe less." The words dropped like stones in water. 30 minutes before the valley was swarming with fighters. 30 minutes pinned under a rifle they couldn't silence. Sophia's pulse hammered. She wanted to believe that someone like Emma could find a way, that John's experience would solve the impossible. But the minutes ticked past, each one marked by another shot from the cave. Every 4 minutes, steady as a clock, the sniper fired again, forcing them tighter into cover. Then the inevitable happened. Robert, the lieutenant, had shifted carefully along the ridge, trying to reach a position where he could call in air support. He moved low, careful, but the enemy was patient. The rifle barked. Robert let out a strangled cry, collapsing into the dust. "Man down!" John roared. His voice was sharp but controlled. "Sophia, get to him. Now." She didn't hesitate. Her body moved before her mind could protest. Slinging her medical bag tight, she dropped low and began crawling across the uneven ground. Every rock scraped her elbows and knees. Every second felt like an eternity under unseen eyes. She kept her head down, her movements deliberate, her heartbeat drumming so loud she wondered if the sniper could hear it. It took 5 agonizing minutes to reach Robert. When she finally slid in beside him, she saw the crimson already soaking his uniform. The round had torn through his left shoulder, breaking bone and ripping tissue. His face was pale, his teeth clenched against the pain. "Hold still, sir," she whispered, though her own voice shook. "I've got you." Her hands worked on instinct, steady despite the storm inside her. Pressure on the wound. Clamp the artery. Morphine for the pain. She tuned out everything else, the gunfire, the shouts, the suffocating heat, and focused on Robert's shallow breaths. Stabilize. Control the bleeding. Keep him alive. It was then, as she adjusted her scope lens to examine the wound more closely, that something caught her eye. A faint glimmer, just for a heartbeat, on the mountainside opposite. Sunlight flashing off metal, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. Her chest tightened. Was it possible? She dared another glance. Again a flicker. The sniper shifting, adjusting his aim. From this angle, through her medical magnification, she could see what the others couldn't. A rifle barrel tucked in shadow, hidden in a crease of stone. Her breath caught in her throat. She had found him. She pressed her radio, whispering, "John, I see him. I have eyes on his position." Static hissed back, then John's reply. "Say again, Sophia." "I can see the sniper. Rock formation, 3rd ridge line, left of the cave mouth." reflection off his scope when he shifts. John wasted no time. Emma, Parker's got eyes on target. Can you hit it from your angle? The answer was immediate and grim. Negative. Terrain blocks me. No line of sight. Silence hung over the channel for a beat too long. Then John spoke, his tone heavy. Sophia, you're the only one with a clear view. Her stomach dropped. She wasn't a sniper. She wasn't even a proper rifleman. She was a medic, with training in anatomy and trauma care, not long-range engagements. And yet, from where she sat, bent over Robert's bleeding shoulder, she had the one angle that mattered. The sniper fired again, the shot striking close enough that stone fragments sliced her cheek. She flinched, but her hand stayed steady on Robert's bandages. She pressed her radio again, her voice low but firm. Sir, I can take the shot. The words felt impossible even as she said them. John's reply was sharp. Negative. Your job is to keep Robert alive. He's stable, she countered, not looking up from her patient. He'll hold for an hour, but none of us will survive that long if the sniper isn't stopped. Give me one chance. Silence answered her, the kind of silence that meant a leader weighing life against life. Finally, John's voice came through, steady as stone. Emma, give her your rifle. Walk her through it. Sophia's heart pounded as the marksman crawled toward her position, rifle in hand. For the first time since the ambush began, she felt the faintest spark of possibility. Emma slid into the dirt beside Sophia, her rifle cradled like something sacred. Dust streaked her face, but her eyes were steady, unreadable. She offered the long weapon with both hands, as though passing not just steel and wood but the weight of life and death. Sophia, she said quietly, this isn't a hunting rifle. It's tuned, zeroed, and unforgiving. You'll have one chance. Sophia's hands trembled as she accepted it. The weapon felt heavier than she expected, more alive somehow. It wasn't just metal. It was trust, responsibility, and the desperate hope of everyone pinned on this ridge. Talk me through it, she whispered. Emma nodded, her tone clipped and precise, the way a surgeon might instruct an assistant during a delicate operation. Scope is zeroed for 1,000 meters. The target is 1,200. That means you'll need to hold 2 mils high to compensate for bullet drop. Wind is running left to right, 8 miles an hour. Hold 1 mil left. The words seemed technical, clinical, but Sophia forced herself to absorb them. Too high. 1 left. She repeated the numbers silently, locking them into memory. She pressed her eye to the scope. The world shrank instantly. The chaos of dust and fear faded, replaced by a narrow circle of glass. There, in the shadows of stone, she saw the dark outline of a man, his rifle resting steady. The enemy sniper, patient, invisible until now. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't a deer in the Montana woods. This wasn't a paper target in training. This was a man, flesh and blood, with his own heartbeat and family. Yet he was also the hunter who had already wounded Robert, and would kill them all if she faltered. Emma's voice stayed calm. Control your breathing. Inhale, exhale halfway, then hold. Let the trigger break clean. Don't yank. Sophia adjusted, her body awkward but steadying. She remembered her father's lessons when she was a child, how he'd guided her small hands on a hunting rifle, how he'd whispered, respect the shot. Don't rush it. Trust yourself. Those words echoed now, a memory reborn in fire and dust. John's voice came over the radio, firm but low. Sophia, you don't have to do this if you're not ready. Her pulse hammered. Her palms were slick, but her voice surprised even her as she answered, I'm ready. If I don't, none of us walk out of here. Time slowed. Through the scope, she saw the enemy shift. He was preparing his next shot, adjusting for angle, unaware that the hunted had finally found his shadow. For a brief 3 seconds his profile grew larger, more defined, as he leaned forward. Now, Emma whispered. Sophia inhaled, exhaled halfway, held her breath. Her fingers squeezed, smooth and steady. The rifle cracked, sharp as lightning. The recoil jolted her shoulder, but she stayed locked on the scope. The bullet arced across the valley, invisible but absolute, taking nearly 2 full seconds to cover the 1,200 meters. In that eternity, Sophia's entire world was silence. Then the round struck. A dark shape toppled backward inside the rock formation, motionless. The enemy's rifle clattered against stone. "Target down," Emma confirmed, peering through her spotting scope. Relief softened her voice for the first time in hours. "Sniper eliminated." For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The valley, once filled with gunfire, seemed to breathe again. Then John's voice broke through, firm but almost reverent. "Outstanding shot, Sophia. You just saved this team." She lowered the rifle, her hands shaking now that the moment had passed. The adrenaline that had steadied her drained all at once, leaving her weak and trembling. She passed the weapon back to Emma, whispering, "Take it. I don't want it." Emma accepted it, her eyes softening. "You did what had to be done." Sophia turned her gaze back to Robert. He was stable, but pale, pain etching lines into his face. She checked his bandages, focusing on her real purpose, the reason she joined the army in the first place. Healing, not killing. Yet she knew the truth. Without that single shot, there would have been no one left to save. 30 long minutes later, the roar of rotor blades filled the valley. Helicopters swept in low, finally able to land now that the sniper was gone. Dust blasted upward in spirals as the team moved quickly, carrying Robert to safety. Sophia stayed beside him, her hands pressed to his wound, whispering calm assurances over the thunder of engines. When they lifted off, leaving the cursed ridgeline behind, Sophia leaned back in her seat, exhausted. Her mind replayed the shot again and again, the slow exhale, the squeeze of the trigger, the shape falling in the scope. She had saved her team. She had also taken a life. Both truths pressed against her chest, heavy and unrelenting. John leaned over, his voice cutting through the noise of the helicopter. "You did more than your duty today, Sophia. You gave us a chance to come home." She nodded numbly, unable to find words. She had thought her purpose in war was simple, to heal. But now, with dust still clinging to her uniform and the memory of the rifle's crack still ringing in her ears, she realized the line between healer and warrior was thinner than she had ever imagined. The valley shrank beneath them, the ridgeline now distant. Yet Sophia knew she would never leave it behind. The shot she fired there would echo through every step of her future, shaping a path she had never expected to walk. And deep down, she understood. War had just redefined her. The helicopter ride back to base blurred into a haze of noise and adrenaline. The thumping blades rattled her chest, but Sophia barely heard them. She kept her hands pressed to Robert's bandaged shoulder, feeling the warmth of his blood seeping into the gauze. He was stable, she reminded herself again and again. Her training had worked. He was alive. That was what mattered. And yet her mind was elsewhere, still on the ridgeline, still on the crack of the rifle and the moment the enemy sniper had fallen. It replayed like a film reel she could not stop, a loop of slow breath, squeeze, recoil, silence. She had always thought of herself as someone who saved lives, not someone who took them. Now she was both. John sat across from her in the chopper, his helmet tilted low, but his eyes fixed on her. He said nothing, only gave a nod, the kind of nod that carried more weight than words. Michael and Daniel were already checking gear, running through the after-action motions like clockwork. Emma, the rifle resting again in her lap, simply stared out the open door at the mountains receding into distance. By the time they reached the forward operating base, dusk had swallowed the valley. Robert was rushed to the medical bay for further treatment. Sophia walked with him until the nurses pulled him away, then stood there, her hands sticky with dried blood, the roar of the rotors fading behind her. Later that night, John found her sitting alone outside the barracks, staring at her palms as though they still carried the rifle. "You did well today," he said simply. Her laugh came brittle, hollow. "I didn't join to shoot people, John." "No one does," he answered, lowering himself beside her. "But you didn't shoot to kill. You shot to save. Don't ever forget that difference." She looked at him, trying to read the truth in his weathered face. "Then why do I feel like something broke inside me?" He sighed, glancing toward the horizon where the last traces of sunlight faded. "Because you're human. The ones who don't feel it, those are the ones I worry about." The following days blurred into debriefs, reports, and medical rounds. Robert's condition improved slowly under her care. The wound had been ugly, but her quick intervention had prevented the worst. He teased her weekly from his cot, calling her his guardian angel with a sniper rifle, though the half-smile in his eyes was heavy with gratitude. John's official report was clinical yet glowing. It noted her bravery under fire, her ability to stabilize a critically wounded officer under sniper attack, and, most importantly, the decisive shot that saved the entire team. The language was spare, but the meaning was clear. Without her, ODA 312 would not have survived. But reports were one thing, nights were another. When she lay down in her bunk, sleep did not come easily. She saw the enemy's silhouette every time she closed her eyes, heard the echo of the rifle in her ears. Sometimes she saw him as a shadow. Sometimes she imagined his face. And always, she wondered who he had been. A soldier? A father? Just another person caught in the machinery of war? Emma approached her once during those restless nights, sliding quietly onto the bunk across from hers. The marksman studied her for a moment before speaking. "You're not the first to feel it," she said softly, "and you won't be the last." Sophia kept her gaze on the ceiling. "You've done it before, haven't you?" "More times than I'd like to count." Emma's tone was calm, but her eyes were distant. "The first is always the hardest. After that, you learn to carry it. Not forget. Never forget. Just carry." Sophia turned to her. "How do you live with it?" Emma's lips curved in a faint, weary smile. "I remind myself why I did it, who I protected, and I let that be enough." The words lingered, carving a small space in Sophia's heart. Maybe it could be enough. Maybe. 3 weeks later, the orders came. A crisp packet, delivered to her hands with the seal of higher command. She read it once, then again, disbelief and dread mixing in her chest. Specialist Sophia Adams is hereby assigned to the Special Operations Target Interdiction Course, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Effective immediately. Training. Sniper School. She sought out John, waving the papers with trembling hands. This can't be right. I'm a medic, not." "You're both now," he interrupted gently. "What you did out there proved you have more than one skill to offer. Command noticed. They want to train you properly." She shook her head, pacing. "I don't want to be a sniper. That's not me." "It wasn't me either once," John said quietly. "None of us start out wanting this life. But the Army doesn't always give us what we want. It gives us what it needs. And right now, it needs someone like you." Sophia stared at him, torn between pride and fear. She thought of Robert, alive because of her hands. She thought of the team, walking away from that valley because of one impossible shot. Maybe she hadn't chosen the path, but maybe the path had chosen her. That night, as she packed her bag, she paused with the orders still clutched in her hand. She whispered to herself, as though to steady her heart, "I'm still a healer. No matter what they teach me, I'll always be a healer." But deep down, she knew the truth. She was becoming something else too. Not just a medic, not just a sniper, something new. For Bragg greeted Sophia with damp air and endless pine trees. It was a far cry from the dust-choked ridges of Afghanistan, but in some ways, the new environment felt heavier. Here, in the heart of Special Operations training, every soldier was measured, weighed, and tested. No excuses, no blurred lines. The Special Operations Target Interdiction Course was notorious for breaking candidates. Some arrived brimming with confidence, only to wash out within weeks. Others carried quiet skill, yet faltered under the psychological burden of precision killing. Sophia felt like an outsider from the first day. She wore the medic's insignia, not the marksman's. Her reputation, the reason she was here at all, rested on a single bullet fired in desperation. She wondered if it had been luck rather than ability. Still, she stepped onto the range with the others, rifle in hand, determination burning beneath the doubt. The instructors were relentless. They spoke of ballistics, wind calls, scope adjustments, and the mathematics of distance. They taught camouflage, stalking, patience measured in hours rather than minutes. The other candidates struggled with the crawl of time, the discipline of holding perfectly still for long stretches. For Sophia, it was oddly familiar. She thought of her medical training, how she had once steadied her hands over an open wound, tuning out chaos while searching for a torn vessel. Sniping, she realized, required the same calm, the same focus, only redirected through a scope. She learned quickly. Her natural steadiness, honed by years of sutures and delicate procedures, translated into a gift for consistent trigger control. Her hunting background returned to her in flashes, the memory of her father whispering patience, the weight of cold Montana mornings, the way a deer stepped slowly into view. Yet here, the stakes were sharper, more final. What surprised the instructors most was not her accuracy, though that grew impressive. It was her mindset. While others treated each shot as an exercise in lethality, Sophia treated it as an act of precision, a clinical task. She approached the trigger the way she approached a scalpel, steady, careful, deliberate. One instructor later remarked that she seemed less like a killer and more like a surgeon extending her skills into a new domain. The training was not just technical. It tested her soul. Instructors pushed scenarios that forced her to confront what it meant to take life deliberately. She spent nights staring at ceiling tiles, wrestling with questions that had no answers. Could she reconcile being both healer and executioner? Could one person embody both extremes without breaking? Emma visited her once during training, flying in with another team for a joint exercise. They shared coffee in the mess hall, and for the first time in weeks Sophia felt something like ease. "You still carry it, don't you?" Emma asked softly. "Every night," Sophia admitted. "I see him. I see that moment. I wonder if it changes who I am." Emma studied her, then gave a rare smile. "It does change you, but not in the way you fear. You don't lose yourself, Sophia. You add to yourself. That's the difference." Those words became her anchor through the remainder of the course. When exhaustion pulled at her, when the weight of expectation pressed too hard, she reminded herself she was not less for what she had done. She was more. Months later, graduation came. Sophia stood at attention in crisp uniform, the sniper's insignia gleaming beside her medics. She had placed first in her class, outshooting veterans who had entered the course with years of combat behind them. The instructors acknowledged her unique strength, an ability to merge healing and precision, compassion and lethality, without allowing one to eclipse the other. When she rejoined her team, the welcome was quiet but profound. Robert, his shoulder scarred yet functional, clapped her on the back with gratitude that needed no words. Michael and Daniel greeted her with grins, already teasing her about trading scalpels for rifles. And John simply nodded, the same silent acknowledgement he had given in the helicopter. The Army soon recognized her as a dual-role asset, medic and designated marksman. Mission shifted. Where once she carried only trauma kits, she now carried a rifle slung beside them. It was a contradiction, a paradox, but one that proved invaluable in the unpredictable tides of war. Years later, her story spread beyond her unit. Training programs cited her as an example of adaptability, of breaking rigid roles when circumstances demanded. Young soldiers heard the tale of the medic who became a sniper for a single shot and learned that sometimes survival required stepping beyond what you thought you were. Sophia never forgot the valley, never forgot the moment that had set her on this path. She carried it always, not as a wound but as a reminder. That one shot had saved her brothers in arms. That one shot had changed her career. That one shot had forced her to see herself not in pieces, healer or warrior, but as a whole. On her quiet nights, she still whispered the same vow she had made back then. "I'm still a healer." But she no longer feared the second truth. She had become more than a medic, more than a sniper. She had become a soldier who embodied both, who proved that saving and protecting sometimes demanded the same steady hands. And in the silence after each mission, when the dust settled and lives were counted, she reminded herself of the lesson that Valley had carved into her soul. Sometimes the most important shot isn't the one you want to take. It's the one you must take, because others are counting on you to make it.